Hello, welcome back to the Women Between Worlds podcast. This is From Wired to Wisdom. It's all about microdosing for women for true magnetism. Because if you've just listened to the previous episode, which was all about staying soft without losing capacity, this episode flows naturally from that because the answer, the question always is that we're looking for the answer. How do we do it? Right? How do we stay in capacity? How do we stay grounded and resourced in a world that won't slow down, in a world that is right now a little bit mad, very fast paced, and a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world? So the question is, how do we find our center? How do we remain in our center? And today I'm going to be sharing with you one of the best tools that I have found for myself and many of the women that I work with to do just that, to bring you back into the body in a way that feels sustainable and safe, and where you can then move out and do all the things that you want to do in the world, in your business, in your personal life, in your health, in your relationships, in a way that comes from a place that's really rooted in your capacity. So that's going to be, we're talking about microdosing, right? And so for me, microdosing psilocybin, which is taking really small sub-perceptual, because you are going to feel something, right? But sub-perceptual meaning you are not going to be tripping, you're not going to be having some big journey, you're not going to be hallucinating, seeing visuals. Taking really small doses of psilocybin mushroom medicine in order to activate, shift, make certain changes that we're going to be talking about in this episode. How do we use psilocybin, and why is it such a good medicine specifically for women's bodies, specifically for the nervous system, and for women like me in midlife, women in their 40s going through shifts, transitions? It's a particularly useful medicine. So that's what we're going to dive into today. So women's bodies are rhythmic, cyclical beings, right? We are rhythmic, cyclical beings. Our bodies do not go through a 24-hour rise and rise and descent and rise and descent. Our bodies are way more complex. This is why our bodies have not been used in medical research, because there's so many different layers, there's so many different factors that affect what's happening within a woman's body, what's happening within her physiology, what's happening within her brain and her emotional world, that makes us far too complex, or has done up until this point, to go through studies. So what we do know about women's bodies is that they are always changing, they are always shifting, they're always responding. Now, this is a really, really important thing. And it's also very, very beautiful, because it nods to, it shows us how connected we are to our environment, right? It shows us just how connected we are to nature, to the shifts in energy, to the shifts in the weather, the seasons, the moon, right? Women's bodies are so attuned to their environment, to other people, and we've been wired that way. We have been biologically wired that way, so that we are able to attune our nervous systems, respond, react to those around us, because women naturally come to the world with a caregiving role. Now, when you get to midlife, this begins to shift, because those caregiving hormones start to decline. And there's a reason for that, because nature is so intelligent. You're not lacking anything. You're not losing stuff that you really need to hold on to. Those hormones that were needed for not just fertility, not just for creating new life, but for sacrificing what you need, what your body needs, so that you can bring another being into the world. So we see this in pregnancy. We see this in what happens to women's bodies when we're pregnant. We give so many minerals to our babies, and that's beautiful. That's a gorgeous thing. The body will prioritize the being that we are growing, the being that we're going to birth into the world. And so our minerals get depleted. If we don't have enough minerals in our diet, this will get taken out of our bones. Women tend to have dental problems when they're pregnant. You know, our teeth can get weakened during pregnancy. So this is the nature of living in a woman's body. And it means when we get to midlife, when we get to our late 30s and around our 40s, these hormones that have been required up until this point are no longer needed. And so things begin to shift. We no longer experience the intoxicating effects of hormones that create a shift in our physiology so that we put others first. So we begin to look inwards. It becomes a time, midlife becomes a time to really go within and to really ask yourself the question, what do I need? What does my body need? What does my energy need? And how do I want to keep showing up? So if you run a business, this has been true in my life. I'm going to talk a little bit about my story just briefly and how I came to get so interested in microdosing and become such a deep relationship with psilocybin medicine through big ceremony and microdosing alike, that I now teach and hold space for others to come through and experience and learn about this medicine. But when we get to midlife, we really begin to ask a lot of questions that we might not have asked before. And even if we have asked these, if you're like me, as I've been a seeker my whole life, I've been asking these questions my whole life, but at midlife, something really shifts. So there's something specific here in women's bodies, in our complexity, in the beauty of that complexity, this intelligence that is asking for a new way of relating at this time in our lives. So this is a beautiful opportunity for us to then begin to ask these deeper questions around, what do I need? And so I had been asking these questions, and I had been beginning to see differences in my capacity, differences in my ability to show up in the same way. So I had been able to push through my 20s, push through my 30s, have babies, birth businesses, have relationships, get married, get divorced, do all the things. And when I got to around 42, 43, my body really began to speak to me differently. And it wasn't the first time I had experienced a type of burnout, a type of burn down, and a difference in my energy. I'd had autoimmune issues in my 30s, so I'd faced and overcome this stuff before. But when I got to around 42, 43, there were some really big shifts. And at this time, mushroom medicine had also come back into my life. I'd first met mushroom medicine as a teenager, and there's a lot of really fun stories there that I'm not going to talk about today. But I first met mushroom medicine as a teenager, and the medicine came back into my life around this time, and I began to have deep ceremonies, go into the mushroom in a really deep way, taking large doses and really exploring my psyche and some things that were really stuck in my body that I felt needed to be seen, needed to move through, right? So the way that I work with the body is that things need to be felt and experienced so that we can keep this cycle, we can keep the flow going, we can keep the energy moving. We don't want stuck energy in the body, in our emotions. So I worked through a lot of stuck energy, and psilocybin was a really, really beautiful medicine for me for that. However, these big ceremonies are not for everyone. Not everybody wants to go really, really deep. There's a lot of fear that can come up, and it's really normal to have fears around doing a big ceremony. There's a lot of fear that can come up, and there is work to be done afterwards. So you can go to, I've seen people go to Costa Rica or whatever country and do a really beautiful plant medicine retreat. And then they come back to their daily life, and how the question is how much of that really gets integrated. And when I began working with people and taking them through these larger dose ceremonies, it was something that I saw, which was, it's one thing to do really big transformative work inside a ceremony, but then what happens afterwards? How do you integrate that into your life? So I became really interested in the integration of the psychedelic experience as a psychotherapist myself. This really fitted into my areas of interest, and the way that people can shift their behaviors, their thinking, their experience of life. And microdosing became a way that I started to explore of not having this huge impact, right? This big impact, this big journey, big ceremony, big aha moments, really powerful. And it's really strong on the nervous system as well, sitting with larger doses of psilocybin. Microdosing, taking small amounts of the medicine, became a much gentler, but still surprisingly, it really surprised me how powerful it could be working with these smaller doses over a period of time, and in a way where you can really integrate those lessons and see real change. So the kind of changes that I began to see really quickly when I started microdosing were shifts in how I felt in my nervous system, shifts in how I felt with so the best way to describe how I felt in my first round of microdosing was peace, was stillness, a stillness like when there's been a noise in the background that you've come to ignore, right? Like a ticking clock or whatever. It's hard for me to ignore ticking clocks, by the way. But if there's been a sound, a hum or something in the background that you've just become used to because you've been hearing it for so long, and then that gets switched off, that feeling you get of spaciousness. Yeah, that feeling of the contrast between having had that hum in the background and then that ending, and just that peace. That's what it felt like. It felt like a feeling that I didn't even really know existed. And that was just like, for me, that blew things wide open, because as amazing as that felt, it also opened up all the questions as to, okay, why am I not feeling like that? Because this is the way my brain works. Why am I not feeling like that on a day-to-day basis? Why am I feeling like that now I'm taking this medicine? And then that began a little spiral of fear. Like, do I need to keep taking this medicine now so that I can keep feeling like this all the time? Like, how does this work? So my experience with microdosing blew my mind, blew my physiology wide open in a completely different way to the larger dose ceremonies, because it gave me this experience that I'd never really experienced before in my life, of feeling calm, rooted, grounded, and like really in capacity, not fighting, not defensive. And having that ability to respond to things in my life, like I give you some examples, like being with my kids, getting my little boy to school. My eldest, she sorts herself out now, but my youngest, he's still at that age where he needs things like, have you cleaned your teeth? You need to get your shoes on. Like, he needs all these kind of reminders. And microdosing, so in the simplest form of day-to-day tasks like that, microdosing gave me this experience of absolute spaciousness, where I was not tight and wound up and irritated by these things. And by having this spaciousness within my body, this feeling of groundedness, opened up so many different pathways for me to be able to see how else can I handle this situation when I am calm, when I am rooted, and when my nervous system is in capacity. The amount of choices of how to deal with this situation, it's like the creativity gates are opened, which is huge. And this is a huge part of microdosing and how it can really help women, especially women in businesses, women in leadership positions, women who are creative and are leading. Microdosing opens up, psilocybin opens up a lot of the potential that's always, it's you, right? It's not coming from the mushroom. The mushroom is not giving you anything. It is just revealing and opening what has always been there. So operating from this new point of choice, operating from this new awareness and this new level of creativity of like, how could I handle that? I might say something different. I might do something different. So I began to see real change and real immediate change that was easy to integrate and make part of my life, right? Because it was happening on a daily level, because I'm taking the medicine daily with breaks, which is important, and I will come back to. We don't take the medicine every single day, but we take the medicine in a rhythmic way to allow us to experience the opening of the body, the opening of the pathways, that neuroplasticity in the brain. And then we have the time to bring that and integrate that and live with that and make that our new reality. So when I had that experience of microdosing for myself, like, of course, I wanted everyone else to experience this. I wanted everyone else to understand how they could experience something that we all know. I think we're so aware that we are wired, right? Especially as this great revealing is happening of neurodivergence and of diagnosis of neurodivergence in women, and this unveiling of these shifts and thresholds like perimenopause and the importance and impact that has on us, whilst we're simultaneously seeing this neurodivergence and perimenopause happening, and then women stepping more into their power and women reclaiming their position in society and running businesses and more money going into women's hands. Like, this is what we're weaving, right? This is what we're weaving right now. How do we know? How do we do the thing that we know we need to do, which is to move from that really wired, frazzled state that most women are operating in, into that embodied, in our bodies, where it feels safe to be in the body. Yeah. Where it feels safe, where you feel regulated. So I began teaching about microdosing, and for the last year I have been holding space for groups of women to come through and learn in detail about how to safely and effectively use the medicine. And I want to tell you about one of my clients. Let's just call her P, and P is a multi-six-figure business owner, an amazing, gorgeous woman. And one of the biggest breakthroughs that she had, her experience of taking the medicine, was going into a day of back-to-back or a couple of one-to-one calls with clients. Now, this is a conversation that often comes up with the women that I work with. It's like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit nervous about taking the medicine and showing up with my clients, showing up in my business, like showing up in my stories, making videos. Like, am I going to be the same? Are people going to notice? Is it like I'm going to be on something? So this is a really natural and normal question that comes up when women are microdosing. And so with P, she was going into this day of one-to-one calls, and she came out of these calls and she'd had this massive breakthrough around how she'd been running her business and how she had been showing up with her clients and within her work. And it was so beautiful because she described her energy, right? So she's this really really brilliant woman. She is incredible at what she does, and she holds amazing space, like creates amazing sessions for her clients. They have big breakthroughs, and she helps them with their businesses. And what she noticed through microdosing was that she could show up in a brand new way in her calls with her clients and be just as brilliant, if not more brilliant, than she'd been before. But the big difference was, so this was the big discovery that she made, was that where she had believed that part of her magic and part of her brilliance was this, like, neurospicy, wired, quirky, energetic, like powered, basically powered by cortisol, by adrenaline, right? This kind of buzzy energy that many of us neurodivergent folk can identify with. She was worried that without that energy, because the microdosing had really rooted her, especially in the beginning, it really brought her into this presence. It brought her into this more kind of peaceful way of being. She was worried that when she went into these calls with her clients, that her usual magic would not be there, because where was that edge? Where was that spark? And the breakthrough that she had was that by being powered by adrenaline, not because she was nervous, but just being powered by that kind of that energy, wasn't just unsustainable, because if we do that, there's a point we get to where we just can't do that anymore. There's only so long we can run on that kind of wired energy. So not only was it not sustainable for her, but it was actually more magic, more power, more creativity, pattern recognition, all these like beautiful things about neurodivergent women. There was more of that was flowing through from this really grounded, rooted, resourced state that she found herself with microdosing. So that was huge, because there are so many women who are leading from that space of wired energy, and maybe there's a fear, maybe you felt a fear of, what if I take that buzz away, then who am I? Who am I? And what is my magic? And I was in that space because when I started working with plant medicines, when I started just having this big shift in my early 40s around like, how do I want to show up? And I've pushed and pushed and pushed so long in my life. Like, what do I do? How long do I keep doing that? I'm tired. Like, not tired as in without chispa and a spark for life, but like, I am tired of being strong. I'm tired of just tired of having to keep pushing through. So there was a lot of fear that came up for me on, if I'm not being powered by the power source of wanting to be productive and wanting to push through, like what else is going to do it? What is going to do it? So making contact with the true power within is so important for women, especially as we move into our 40s. And for some women, it will become earlier than that. And the signs and symptoms of fatigue, of illness, of aches and pains, of autoimmune, of, all of the of irritability, of tiredness, of sleep issues, cycle irregularities. Like for some women, those things will start much younger, like they did for me. But for many women, for most women, it will really ramp up during the mid-40s. Right. So there has to be another way. There has to be another way to be fueled, right? There has to be another way to move through life. And so there's a couple of things I want to say about microdosing and how microdosing works, because I want to be really clear without going into loads of like sciencey detail. I'm running a workshop, the Winter Reset, which is all about microdosing as modern magic. So you can find the link to join that workshop and learn more and go more in depth about how psilocybin interacts with our hormones and our nervous system and our brains, because I'll be going into a lot more detail in a way that you can really understand and absorb and is useful to you. I'll be going into more detail in that workshop. But what I really want to say today in this episode is it's not the mushroom doing it to you. It's not the mushroom giving you something, giving you energy, giving you, it's not like taking a herb, a supplement. It's not a biohack. The mushroom is a revealer. The mushroom is an amplifier. You know, the mushroom will show you things. So the mushroom might give you more energy by showing you the blocks that are standing in your way, like places where you haven't got boundaries in place in your life. That could be relationships with your parents. It could be relationships with your ex. It could be the way that you are managing your business or your relationship with your clients. The mushroom will show you and will reveal to you the things that are draining your energy or the things that are standing in the way of you really being in your power. Yeah, of you really connecting to that part of you that knows how to take care of yourself so that you can be fully resourced, so that you can be rooted and grounded and create and lead and show up from a space of really being in your power. So the mushroom doesn't like give you the power. The mushroom doesn't come in and like alter your physiology and give it to you. So that's why you don't have to keep doing it forever. So remember, that was one of my fears that came up. It's like, wow, I've never felt so incapacity before. I've never felt so resourced before. Will I have to keep taking the mushroom? Will I have to keep microdosing forever? So the answer was no, because first of all, I had no blueprint. I had no template of what it looked like to be a resourced woman, or what it felt like to have that kind of power source and that energy from a different space, from a sustainable space. So the mushroom gave me that template. It reminded me, it reconnected me with my original blueprint, right? Because we're born to feel good. We're born to live this life feeling amazing. We're born to experience, yeah, there's going to be sadness and tiredness, and like there's going to be obstacles and things we have to move through, but we're born to be optimal. Yeah, we're born to have good energy, to feel good, even in midlife, you know, from midlife, because when the wisdom comes in, when we move, so we're moving from wired to wisdom, and the wisdom comes in, we should be even more resourced. We should feel even more joy, pleasure, groundedness, safety. Yeah. This is the design. This is what you were designed to do. So the fact that we're so disconnected from this, the fact that we are so, many of us are, most of society are just so far away from our original blueprint, from our original template. And the beauty of microdosing is that it helps us begin to reconnect with that by showing us what it feels like, by giving us visibility of ways of things that are standing in our way, and then also the neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity in the brain is all about opening up different regions that weren't talking to each other before. So we know when we're under stress, when there's large amounts of adrenaline or cortisol in the body, we operate from a very primal part of the brain. You know, this is a brain region, it's in the amygdala. It's all about, I've got to run away from the lion as quickly as possible. I've got to find safety. When we're operating from that part of the brain, we're not operating from solution focus. We're not operating from creativity. We're not operating from, wow, I could do it like this, I could do it like this, I could do it like this, I could do it like that. There's just one thing the brain's thinking about: how can I get away from the lion? And so most of us are living life like that. Most of us, even if we've got money, even if we're, even if we're on paper, it looks like we've got great lives, we've got a happy relationship, and we've got a roof over our heads and a nice home and a family and all these things. But most of us are still operating from that primal state in the brain. So microdosing is a really beautiful way, especially for women's nervous systems. I like to call microdosing a feminine technology because it works so well with our nervous systems to help us with these fluctuations, with the responsiveness, with the way that we are, we are not linear. We don't wake up in the morning and feel like this, and then it's like, yeah. Or if you do feel like that and you feel flat and you just feel numb, then, you know, then that's also being out of balance as well. So microdosing is a beautiful way to work within the feminine systems, to work with the feminine body, because it begins to put us back into the driving seat, into a position of power, not power over, but power within and power from, because we are in a space where we can operate with choice, where we can operate with creativity, where we can see these different ways and not in an overwhelm way, right? So sometimes my neurodivergence, I can get a little bit of decision fatigue, like if there's too many things going on, but from a space of that being really pleasurable and enjoyable. So, integration. Let's talk about integration. So we can do all these beautiful things, and we can, let's say you've decided to start working with psilocybin, you find yourself some medicine and you start microdosing. The part that's really missing for so many people when they start working with the medicine is their integration. Integration is so important. And I meet a lot of people in my daily life just by chance, if you believe in chance, just by chance, that are already microdosing. So I might go to my chiropractor, my osteopath, or I might go and see somebody and a conversation comes up and I find out, oh, they're microdosing too. Or I might meet a GP or somebody. You'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be, you may be surprised how many people are microdosing, or maybe you're already microdosing and you're watching this. Yeah, maybe you want to see, you just want to see what I have to say, or you want to hear a different side of it. So for me, microdosing is all about the integration. It's all about the intention. It's all about having a container, because this medicine responds to presence. It responds to us showing up, us having clear intentions, coming to the medicine with a prayer. So for me, it's been a very sacred and yeah, a very sacred experience. And that's something that I bring to my containers as well. We can talk about the neuroplasticity. We can talk about women's physiology and hormones. We can talk about shifting out of dopamine seeking to oxytocin and joy, love, and all of these gorgeous things. We can talk about these elements, but it's really a deeply personal journey that you will go on with the medicine if you come into it knowing that this is a very sacred relationship that you are beginning. Yeah. So just remember that this is a very sacred medicine. And our ancestors, wherever you live, wherever you are from, mushrooms are, you know, they're not a plant, they're a fungi, so they're not part of the plant kingdom technically. Fungi grow all over the planet, all over the world. So this is so beautiful. This is what I love about the mushroom as well, is that this is accessible all over the world. It's not like ayahuasca or even cacao that can only be grown in certain regions of the planet. Mushroom is medicine for everybody. Mushroom is a very modern medicine. So our ancestors, wherever your ancestors are from, our ancestors have been working with this medicine, especially women, and especially in turns of the seasons and in moments of shifts. So I love to really work with psilocybin in the winter. This is a really gorgeous time. And in my upcoming workshop, the Winter Reset, I'll be going into more detail about the medicine women of the past, our lineages, our ancestors, and how women have worked with the mushroom for millennia, and what we can learn from them now in our modern life. How can we bring that ancient medicine? You know, the mushroom really is an ancient medicine for modern times. And so there is a beautiful part in the workshop where we will be going on a journey and connecting with our roots with this medicine. And so let's wrap up. Let's wrap up with this episode. I would like to end this episode with an invitation for you. I would like to invite you to ask me a question, to leave a comment, to send me a message. You can comment wherever you are watching this video, whatever platform you're watching this video on. You can find me on Instagram at sarahwall.co. You can ask me a question. What is your burning question about microdosing for women? And I will do my best to give you the information that you need, or to point you in the right direction, or to advise you, because this truly is absolutely life-changing medicine that we can use. And microdosing is such a beautiful, and I'm smiling because I was going to say easy, and I don't want to use the word easy because I think I have to put a little bit of a caveat in that, there are things that come up when we microdose. Even though we're taking a really small amount, there can be things that come up, and they usually do, especially in my containers, because of who I am and the kind of medicine woman I am and the spaces that I hold. If things need to come up, big things need to come up and be seen and be addressed, then they will. So there is that caveat, but it is a very loving and powerful and an easeful, mostly easeful way to make really big changes. So if you want to make changes, if you want to change how you feel, right? Like changing how you feel habitually, changing your habits or the thoughts that are you stuck in a thought pattern thinking certain things. Like, we can be in a position where we feel really, where things look really good, but they don't feel really good. Yeah. Like, women can be in bodies that look amazing, but does she feel really good about herself? Does she feel really good inside? You could be running a really successful business, but does it feel good to be in that business? And is it sustainable for you to keep showing up like that? So if you want to make changes, real changes, change to your behavior, changes to how you feel, then microdosing psilocybin could be a medicine for you. Okay, thank you so much, as always, for joining me in this space, for joining me on this walk between worlds, women between worlds. And yeah, thank you for being part of this conversation. Please do like, share, send this to somebody that needs to hear this today, and I will see you in the next episode.